Hello and welcome to the 49ers Plus podcast. I'm Al Moriello, and this is your source for the most objective 49ers discussion and analysis. And today we're going to be discussing fan complaints like crazy this week, centered around Kyle Shanahan. Fans want him gone. Brock Purdy not having a season that's up to par for 49er fans. They don't want him re-signed, they want a different quarterback, or don't want to give him as much money as the market may dictate. I have a lot of thoughts there. And then we're going to jump into the 49ers Green Bay preview Sunday, 4 o'clock on Fox, more or less nationally televised game. We're going to be talking about the Niners playoff chances, injuries, Brock's shoulder, Kittle's hip and oblique, if Trent Williams can play, Bosa's injury, Charvarius Ward should return. We're going to be going over stats and key players from the Packers, rankings on offense and defense, and questions I have for this game. I do have a lot before getting into a prediction. So let's just jump right into it. No time to waste. Let's talk about the Kyle Shanahan situation. And 49er fans, for the most part, and if you're using social media as a guide, which I am, it is a haven of negativity and toxicity. And people were having a debate online, like if you're a content creator, what garners more engagement and clicks? Positivity about your team or negativity? And I fall on the side of negativity. Like, you're going to click on the article more so about what's wrong with the 49ers. Should Kyle go? What's wrong with Brock? What's wrong with the defense? What's wrong with the running game? Versus anybody heaping praise. Now, those get clicks as well, and I click on both. And articles, not something by another, content creator. I don't really listen to any other podcasts or videos really at all, between work and family and coaching, wanting to play video games, doing research for this podcast, and just other things in life. I don't have the time to devote. And I know there are a lot of good content creators out there. And I know there are a lot that, I don't agree with. It doesn't make them bad content creators, but just opinions that I don't share. And that's not to say that I can't be convinced. I'm not somebody that is so steadfast and devout in my beliefs or predictions that if someone brings up a good point or another point of view that I haven't considered, that I wouldn't change my stance. Like, I've always been like that in work. I'm an opinionated person, and whether that's because I'm Italian or not, or whether because I just have strong beliefs in my stances based on the research and education that I do for myself, whether it is for work or hobbies, such as this. But I'm not one that's going to draw a line in the sand like a lot of people out there and just keep pounding the drum of my opinion's right, I'm right, you're a moron, you're wrong. Believe me, there are morons out there. There are stupid people out there in Twitter, other social media platforms, just walking the face of the earth every day. And I don't consider myself a rocket scientist by any means, but the Kyle Shanahan talk of, if he loses another game or two, he's on the hot seat, is complete nonsense. His seat is so cold, if you sit on it, your ass will have frostbite. It's cold, similar to the first time Doc Brown's DeLorean made that trip 1 minute into the future with the dog Einstein in the driver's seat at the Twin Pines Mall from Back to the Future 1. When the DeLorean reappeared and Doc Brown went to open, he was like, oh, and Michael J. Fox was like, oh, what is it, hot? He's like, no, it's cold, damn cold. That's how cold Kyle Shanahan's seat, his cold seat is. He's under contract between now and 2027, 3 more seasons. Is it conceivable that if the Niners go 7-10 and next year they're 4-12, that he can get let go and not play out the last 2 years of his contract? Sure. But anything going on for this year in terms of moving on from Kyle is a complete non-starter for me. Do you remember the years of Chip Kelly and Mike Tomsula and Mike Singletary and Trent Baalke at GM. And before Jim Harbaugh, you had Dennis Erickson, really between like the Mariucci and Harbaugh years. And there might be another coach in there I'm forgetting. It was just so bad at times that you don't even want to think about it. Jed York lucked into Jim Harbaugh in a way because Harbaugh was coaching at Stanford, right down the road, showed interest, threw a lot of money at him, had him. Now, there's a lot of friction, obviously, between Harbaugh and the front office and Baalke. Jed York decided to go with Baalke, which was the wrong decision in every way, shape, or form, because Jim Harbaugh very well might be, I don't want to say, hyperbole would be to say that he's the best coach in the NFL. That still goes to Andy Reid, the number of Super Bowls he's won with Patrick Mahomes the past 5 years. You have someone like a John Harbaugh, right? Obviously, very, very good coach. But Jim Harbaugh has won everywhere he went. University of San Diego, Stanford, San Francisco, Michigan, and now LA with the Chargers. Kyle Shanahan's only been a coach for one team. But do we really give Jed York the benefit of the doubt that if Kyle Shanahan is fired or leaves voluntarily 2 or 3 years from now, even when his contract is up, that they can find somebody better? Who knows who the hot coordinators would be in 2026, 2027? But Kyle Shanahan is widely considered a top 5 coach by people that are smarter than fans, people that are more objective than emotional fans, because their favorite team, the 49ers, are 5-5 this year. It is not perfect, and I'm going to get into that in a minute or two. It's not perfect. He has his drawbacks. But when people say he's like Andy Reid, oh, the Niners have gone as far as they can with Kyle. They're never going to win a big game. Just like the Eagles, they never won a big game, and then he leaves, and then they win the Super Bowl. Slow down, revisionist history dude or dudette. Andy Reid's last 3 years in Philadelphia, he went 10-6, 8-8, 4-12. Declined in 3 years. Then, do you remember Chip Kelly came in? And the first year, the Eagles looked like they were going to be unstoppable with that offense, fast-paced stuff. 10-6 out in the wild card round. Next year, 10-6. Next year, 7-9, fired. Then Doug Peterson comes in 2016, 7-9. And then 2017, they win the Super Bowl. So, did they get a Super Bowl after Andy Reid? Yes. 5 years after Andy Reid. 49er fan, average, highly emotional, illogical 49er fan out there. And it's no one that listens to this podcast, because I pride myself on having the smartest and most informed and educated fan base out there. Not because you listen to me, not at all, but just because I know you guys are. Average 49er fan, do you think you can wait 5 years to be relevant again? And I'm not going to say that that's guaranteed, but if you're going to use the Eagles as a model, oh, Andy Reid, gotta let him go. And then there's probably going to be a dry period somewhere in between there. There's no guarantee you find the right head coach. And if Kyle goes, maybe John Lynch goes as well. There's no guarantee you're going to find the right combination of head coach and GM to lead this team back to a promised land. What we do know is outside of 17 and 18, so get those years off the books because they were trash. They were a talent bereft organization until they traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, brought in Debo, brought in Emmanuel Sanders in 2019, brought in Bosa. Warner got more playing time. Sherman, coming back from the Achilles, getting healthy. They rounded into form in 2019. So you're talking 2019, 2020, 21, 22, 23, 24. 5.5, 6 years. And 2020 is a complete wash when you lose Bosa and Kittle for most of the year and Jimmy getting hurt. The COVID year was a mess team-wise and injury-wise. 6-10, right? Didn't have a chance. Is that on Kyle or is that on injuries more? You can attribute the 6 wins to Kyle with the MASH squad unit that they were putting together and out there. I am not a Kyle apologist. I am not a Niner homer at all. I've picked against the Niners multiple times this year. If you're going to get rid of Kyle Shanahan, and they're not, let me stress this, they're not, you got to have somebody better in mind. And just because Ben Johnson is having a good year in Detroit, a really good year offensively in Detroit, no guarantee he's a good head coach. You want to bring a retread in like Mike Vrabel? No guarantee, like whatever archaic offense he's going to bring with him, that's going to work. And then people say Bill Belichick. Belichick was nothing before and after Tom Brady. And yeah, he's got the 6 Super Bowl rings and still might be the best head coach of all time. But didn't look great without Brady early or late in his career. And if he's that good of a coach, you would think things would look a little bit better when you're not having the greatest all-time quarterback and one of the greatest players of all time, regardless of position, not on your team. People have said, oh, he's not a leader. He's just an X's and O's guy. He's not a leader. How do you know? He doesn't throw anybody under the bus, right? He stands by his players. We see, pre-game press conferences, post-game press conferences. Sometimes we see things after games, after wins, sometimes after losses about how things have gone. How do you know, 49er fan, that he's not a good leader? Where are you? Do you work in the building? Are you part of the organization? Are you privy to secret audio clips, video clips, meetings with Kyle, calling John, that you actually understand if he is a leader or not? Because Mike Singletary screamed at his team and pulled his pants down halftime during a game. Does that mean he's a good leader? Bill Belichick doesn't answer questions to any reporter or anybody. Does that make him a good leader? Mike Tomlin, outside of this year, has been average for the past, 5 years. He hasn't gotten fired because Pittsburgh doesn't believe in making changes just for the sake of making changes. So does that make him a good leader? And if he is a good leader, why is his team so goddamn average? Andy Reid, is he a good leader because he's jolly like Santa Claus and he's in Burger King or whatever, State Farm commercials, and has the one of the best quarterbacks in the past 25 years to help him win, 3 Super Bowls? If he was that good of a coach, why didn't he go to more than 1 Super Bowl with the Eagles? And why couldn't he really do anything prior to Patrick Mahomes with Kansas City? All these claims people throw out there, it's for engagement, it's for baiting, it's for watching their video or just to engage with their sentences that they're writing on different social media platforms. Nobody knows for sure. And can we be fair and say everybody has different leadership styles, that the leadership that Tom Brady and Peyton Manning displayed on the field was vastly different than a Drew Brees or an Eli Manning or a Steve Young or a Joe Montana, right? John Elway. You don't need to be he's a hothead. He's yelling at his guys. He's a leader. It's because Brady's a winner. Winning gives him the carte blanche to yell in people's face. If he didn't have a Super Bowl ring to his name, do you think players are going to stand someone yelling in my face who hasn't won shit? Kyle has his negatives. He's stubborn. And we've seen it this year. And we're going to get into it. Jordan Mason leading the league in rushing or being top 2 or 3 during McCaffrey's absence. McCaffrey's back. Jordan Mason, nowhere to be found. Kyle believes in positionless football. He said that phrase many times. Yet when someone's out like Kittle or a Debo or a CMC or an Ayuk, he can't adjust. If it's positionless football, then those absences mean you plug and play with somebody else. Hasn't developed a tight end too. Is completely reliant on McCaffrey in the running game and the pass game out of the backfield. Outside of that bomb over his shoulder in Tampa down the right sideline late in the game where Brock was blitzed and McCaffrey, he threw it before McCaffrey looked and McCaffrey made a nice kind of basket over the shoulder catch. Are you telling me that these swing passes and some of the routes that McCaffrey runs, that Mason can't run it, that Correndo can't run it, that Patrick Taylor can't run it, who's on the practice squad? Horseshit. There's a reluctance there to use those running backs because it's not McCaffrey. And McCaffrey's better. I get it. But come on. I've said this probably a handful of times, and I'm going to keep saying it. I refuse to believe that 20-year-olds, mid-20-year-olds who've been playing football for probably 15 to 20 years can't catch a goddamn football. Some can catch better than others, but they can't be a non-starter or not an option in the passing game because either Brock is hesitant to throw to him or Kyle is not drawing those plays up for them. You can't convince me, Kyle, that no one else can run a jet sweep on the team or a tunnel screen or wide receiver screen other than Deebo Samuel. You can't convince me of that. We can say maybe Deebo runs it the best because of his blend of physicality and speed, but you can't tell me Pearsall can't do it. You can't tell me Jacob Cowan can't do it if he's healthy coming out of the concussion protocol. And then what was it? Last year when Deebo missed time, they put Juwan Jennings in the backfield as a running back. That's your solution, Kyle? It wasn't Ray McCloud. It was Juwan Jennings? What the fuck is that? Don't outsmart yourself. Don't overthink things. If it's all about getting a player in space with a ball in his hand, then your backup should be your punt returner or your kick returner, because that is the definition of a player with the ball in his hands and space, right? Wanting to make people miss. Stubborn with the defense, keeps playing this cover three that doesn't blitz at all, and Nick Sorensen is taking it to a whole new level of vanilla. Doesn't want to doesn't want to adjust the defense to things that give him problems. Jim Schwartz's defense, Brian Flores' defense, pressure packages. I'm not saying blitz as much as the Browns and the Vikings are blitzing this year, but blitz more than once or twice like they did against Seattle. Send some pressure at Geno Smith. I don't think he's a rocket scientist. Make him make the smart and quick throw instead of just giving them time, giving him and other quarterbacks time to pick apart a defense that fades down the stretch, can't finish. This year is a microcosm of Kyle's playoff career in a way. Couldn't finish in either Super Bowl. Okay? That's where we could say he couldn't finish. Do we really want to say in the 2021 NFC Championship game that the Niners didn't finish when Jaquiski Tartt drops an interception that could have changed the outcome of the game? All right. So that's not finishing. Is that Kyle's fault that Jaquiski Tartt dropped that pick? No. The Rams were the better team that year. Go to the Super Bowl. They beat the Bengals. The Niners were right there and had a chance. They get up 10. Sometimes he gets away from what's working, the run, the pass, whatever it may be. But not being able to hold a 10-point lead in like the first quarter, second quarter, it happens all the time in any level of football, guys. Oh, another 10-point lead that Kyle blew. It happens. The Eagles NFC Championship game doesn't count because Kyle lost Brock Purdy and he effectively had no quarterback in the second half of that game. What are they supposed to do? Did they come back against the Lions last year? Did they come back against the Packers last year? Has Kyle and Brock won other playoff games? Brock is 4-1 in his playoff career in games that he started and finished. Don't tell me Brock can't win a big game. Don't tell me Kyle can't win a big game. Kyle just hasn't won a Super Bowl, and he's been to one more Super Bowl than Andy Reid, and it's just unfortunate that he's gone up against Andy Reid and the best quarterback of this generation in both Super Bowls. But last Super Bowl, Brock also did leave the game in the fourth quarter with a 3-point lead. Defense didn't hold. Did leave the game in overtime with a 3-point lead. Defense didn't hold. We can put that on Kyle. We could put that on Steve Wilks. We could put that on the players, or we could give a nod to Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes for doing what they needed to do to get the job done. And I said this last podcast in case you didn't listen. Sometimes it's not about what your team didn't do, but it's actually about what the other team did. The Niners can lose games. The Niners can get outplayed. The Niners can get outclassed by teams offensively, defensively, and certainly through special teams at times. When the Niners lose, there is no divine right that the Niners have to win every game, every play, every snap, every drive, every quarter, every half. It's ridiculous and illogical. Sometimes the other team out-executes you. Sometimes the other team is better. And I think there's more on Kyle now because I think he's playing at a deficit with Nick Sorensen because he's not always putting his players in the best position to close out games. They have too much talent to play this passive. I've said it last podcast. You can't be an aggressive team, an aggressive defense when you are playing read and react all fucking game long. And if you want to say maybe there's blame to go around that Kyle can't get them over the hump. Some of the things he does offensively, getting away from the run in the second half of the first Super Bowl. I think he learns in the next Super Bowl. Trick play to Jennings, right? Ran the ball better. He was more aggressive going for it on fourth down. It's just when Patrick Mahomes needs points or a touchdown, Mahomes gets it. Losing to Mahomes and Reed is not the worst. It's the worst thing in the world because it's the Super Bowl. And actually, that's not even the worst thing in the world. You tip your cap. There's no shame in losing to Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Only the Bills have beaten them this year. Kyle has things to work on. Kyle is not the biggest problem. Kyle's not going anywhere. Kyle gets fired, he'll have a job a half hour later. Just because he hasn't won you a Super Bowl does not mean he needs to go. So let's get our heads on straight a little bit, guys. And that leads us to Brock. Let's start out with positives. This year, he's 4th in yards per game, 12th in touchdowns, 5th in QBR, and he's 14th in QB rating. Brock's a top 10 quarterback. He just is. I hate to burst your Brock hater bubble, or I hate to burst any narrative you have about, well, Brock isn't good because he doesn't have a strong arm and he's not having a great year and he wouldn't do this well on other teams. Those last two are true. He's not having as good a year as last year, which was highly, highly ridiculously efficient and explosive. So there was going to be some regression, right? To think he was going to throw another 30 plus touchdowns and 11 or 12 interceptions with McCaffrey being out half the year, Ayuk, Jennings missing time, Debo missing time, injuries on defense, a lot of injuries on defense, a bad defensive coordinator, a very vanilla, I shouldn't say bad, a very vanilla defensive coordinator. What else is Brock? He's also an MVP finalist last year. He's been to a Super Bowl, 2 NFC championship games. How many other players outside of Mahomes has that resume? Those things in triplicate. MVP finalist, been to a Super Bowl, and been to another championship game in another year, which he was a non-factor in because of an elbow injury. Give me another player other than Mahomes that has that resume. Burrow? Been to a Super Bowl. I think he was been to another AFC championship game, right? It's not Hurts. It's not Dak. It's not Josh Allen. Never been to a Super Bowl. Been to what? One AFC championship game? Not Lamar. He's got a couple MVPs. Been to one championship game. Never been to a Super Bowl. And I'm not going to confuse Brock's talent or athleticism with those quarterbacks. But it's what you do in the postseason, right? Are people going to remember? Well, people probably will remember if Lamar never gets to or wins a Super Bowl that he was a great regular season quarterback, like Peyton Manning was until he broke through. You can win all the MVPs you want. You can put up all the yards you want. But if you're going to wilt in big games like he did last week against the Steelers, lost the game when your defense doesn't give up a touchdown, 5 field goals or 6 field goals and you lose. And he very well might win another MVP, and it very well might be deserving, but you're not elevating your team. I just saw something before on here that Brock Purdy doesn't make those around him better. Well, does Lamar, if he can't get to a Super Bowl or make deep playoff runs? Does Dak? Does Josh Allen he makes himself better and makes big plays himself? Does he actually make players better around him? You can actually argue that it's really only Mahomes because he's had to do the same with less this year. Not having Pacheco, not having a couple of his top receivers. He still always had Kelce, although he's obviously on the back 9 of his career, and who knows if he's going to play again after this year. But guys, if you're going to make a statement like Brock Purdy doesn't make those around him better, he actually does. I mean, compared to Jimmy, and I know people have a lot against Jimmy, this offense elevated when Brock took over. So what does that mean? He's getting more out of Kyle's offense. He's putting his players in better positions than Jimmy did because Brock had a better year than Jimmy ever did. Because Brock got to a Super Bowl, didn't throw 2 picks. Because Brock was an MVP candidate last year. I'm not a Brock homer. I'm not a homer of any player. I try to be as objective as possible. And sometimes maybe my opinions slant a little more to the negative or the positive. But if you're going to say Brock Purdy doesn't make players better around him, who really in the NFL outside of Patrick Mahomes does? It's such a ridiculous and unfair take. Here's what Brock is. He has the best completion percentage in the league on throws 15 plus yards downfield, 57%. That rating was 9th in the past 15 seasons. That completion percentage was 9th in the past 15 seasons. You know who was best in the past 15 seasons? Brock, last year. He is not a dink and dunk quarterback. We all know this as 49er fans watching the games, and the stats prove it. Brock ranks 30th in screen passes this season. You know who's number 1? Patrick Mahomes. You know who's 7th? Josh Allen. You know who's 9th? CJ Stroud. Lamar Jackson is 10th. Brock is not dinking and dunking. The screen game, for whatever reason, has never been a part of Kyle Shanahan's system. And I don't get it when you have someone like McCaffrey or Debo or Kittle that can run like those middle screens. They run wide receiver tunnel stuff once or twice a game, but not nearly enough to get those easy, cheap yards that Brock and the offense could benefit from, right? And people are worried about his contract, what he's going to cost, that he's not worth 50 or 60 million dollars. Let me stop right there and say, I agree he's not worth 60 plus million. I don't think any quarterback in the league is worth $60 million. And it's not because Dak got $60 million that the Cowboys suck. The Cowboys just weren't a very good team this year. Even with Dak, they weren't a very good team. They're worse with Cooper Rush, and they'd probably be, well, it's hard to say they'd be even worse with Trey Lance, but if Trey Lance can't beat out Cooper Rush, who was named the starter this upcoming weekend against the Commanders, then how bad does Trey Lance look in practice? Brock is a top 10 quarterback. And if you want to argue with me, I'll acquiesce and say he's a top 10 to 12 quarterback. And he is going to get paid as such. The question is, does he get paid like a top 1 to 5 quarterback? Or does he get paid like a top 6 to 10 or 6 to 12 quarterback? And oh, by the way, the 9th highest paid quarterback in the league is Jalen Hurts, and he's making $51 million annually. Whether you want to say Hurts is better than him or not, you could have that debate. What we can agree with is Hurts's production, his stats as a fantasy football quarterback are inflated due to the number of tush pushes he gets. Brock actually runs the ball, not designed, but breaks the pocket more than Hurts does. But we're talking about total touchdowns. The tush push inside the 5 nonsense gives Jalen Hurts an edge, but it's a bit of a ridiculous one when you think about it. So now let's talk about money, because I've seen a lot of Brock shouldn't get paid more than, offer him $30, $35 million, $40 million. Who are they bidding against? They should, he's not worth that much. You've probably never gotten a pay increase in your life. You've probably never negotiated money for yourself in your life if you have that output. It's really the market and the agent, right? Like, I don't know how much some players are really pushing for 55 million versus 52 or 53. And a lot of players have that ego of, if someone's making $20 million a year, I want to make 20 and a half. So I could be the highest paid at my position. I know there's a lot of ego and dick stroking that's involved when it comes to a lot of this stuff, but let's look at the numbers. Per year, some on the higher end. Jordan Love, $55 million a year. Trevor Lawrence, $55 million a year. Tua, $53 million a year. If you're Brock or Brock's agent, do you really think you're not in that class? Right? How does Brock's resume compare to those three? How does Brock's resume compare to Jordan Love, who got paid $55 million a year based on his last 9 starts of last year? And then, oh, by the way, completely shit himself in the second half of the playoff game against the Niners. Can you imagine if Brock Purdy was the one that threw 2 second half picks to sink his team and threw an egregious cardinal sin across his body late to the middle of the field pick to Dre Greenlaw that literally ended the game. I don't know why I had to clap like that, but it ended the goddamn game. Can you imagine if Brock did that? I'm not on Packer feeds. Was there any big feedback or blowback for Jordan Love for doing that? Oh, it's his first time in the play. Brock's first time in the playoffs. He didn't throw picks like that. First year, got the NFC Championship game against the Eagles, got knocked out with the elbow injury. And that was Jordan Love's third or fourth year in the league. Doesn't matter if he wasn't playing or not. Still learning, still sitting, still growing. Let's back up again. Jordan Love gets $55 million a year based on 9 games, 2 playoff games, one of which he looked like shit, and he cost his team the game. At the end, when you just need to get into field goal range to tie it, he cost his team the game. Oh, but look at those throws off his back foot, and look at the arm talent. Potential and talent in certain areas. Plus 50 cents gets you a child-sized bag of chips. It just does. What has Trevor Lawrence done other than grow his hair out to his shoulders that makes him worth $55 million a year? Trevor Lawrence of the one playoff win. Yes, he had Urban Meyer for his first year. I don't think Urban Meyer did irreparable damage to Trevor Lawrence. Doug Peterson came in, has been better for him, although that team is hot garbage. Where's Trevor Lawrence elevating anybody? Jordan Love elevating anybody? No and no. In fact, you can argue that Jordan Love hasn't elevated anybody so much that they had to bring in Josh Jacobs at running back to give him extra help. Trevor Lawrence has Christian Kirk, Travis Etienne, Evan Ingram at tight end, Gabe Davis, receiver. He's got weapons. Not performing, but no one comes down on him. Tua, and listen, the injuries are unfortunate with the concussion stuff. I'm not going to make light about that. But he got paid $53 million with a concussion history and hasn't really, I mean, I know he's missed a lot of time this year, hasn't looked great this year. Had a good-ish season last year when he was fully healthy. Was he an MVP candidate? His team was in the playoffs. No. My God, before people talk, just fucking think. Now, the lower end of the spectrum, you have players like Derek Carr making $35 million a year, Daniel Jones making $40, Kirk Cousins making $45, and Deshaun Watson making $46. Hey, Clown Shoes, average 49er fan, you think that Brock Purdy should be paid between $35 and $46 million when those players are Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, Kirk Cousins, and Deshaun Watson? Use your fucking heads, guys. It's not your money. 2, it's not your choice. And 3, you're just off base. You're going to get paid 1 based on the market and 2 based on comparable players. And you could argue that Love, Lawrence, and Tua, when you compare their resumes, they're not even comparable players to Brock. Oh, but the talent and the height and the measurables and the this and the that. They don't have Brock's poise. They don't have Brock's accuracy. They don't have Brock's mobility. They don't have Brock's resume. Not saying they can't hold Brock's jock, but let's get off the whole physical attribute shit. Because if that's the case, Jamarcus Russell would have turned into something. Jeff George, Ryan Leaf, they would have turned into something. Anthony Richardson had a nice game. Jury's still out on him. The big arm, the fast legs, doesn't matter if you don't have it between the ears. Doesn't matter if you can't be a leader. Brock's a leader. You hear him. He doesn't throw anybody under the bus. He takes responsibility all the time for what he does or what his teammates do. And let's get back to the money stuff again. So, and then in between you have Lamar at 52, Hurts at 51, Mahomes at 45, Allen at 43, and Stafford at 40. So Stafford's the oldest of the bunch. You're not going to give an older quarterback the 50 plus million. Mahomes and Allen got extended early. Good for their teams. The salary cap goes up. Other players got extended. They're pushing the higher end of the spectrum up. And that's unfortunate in a way for them because they should be making mid-50s. They are that talented, Mahomes and Allen. Mahomes and Allen should be paid more than Jalen Hurts. They should be paid more than Jordan Love, Trevor Lawrence, and Tua. And they should be paid more than Brock. Brock's going to get paid. And he's going to get paid in the low 50s. I think the low to mid 50s. He's not going to be making $60 million. The Niners are $48 million under the cap next year. This idea of I don't know how much how much less voluntarily he's going to take. Did Bosa take less? Did Warner take less when he was up for it? Did Kittle take less? Did Debo take less? Did Ayuk take less? No one should voluntarily take less. I mean, when did we actually see that other than the Miami Heat super team where LeBron took a little less and Wade did and Bosh? When does that actually happen? A team discount. It happens when you sign a player early, like the Niners did for Demo. It's making $18.4 million a year. If they waited till he got to free agency, that might have gone up another $2 or $3 million based on what other comparable corners have got. I'm okay with Demo at 18.4. Maybe he's a little hot, maybe 16 I would have felt better about, but it's not my money. Is that $2.5 million really going to break the bank? Here's what I actually was against. When Jesus Christ, I don't know who that is. When Trent Williams and Christian McCaffrey held out because they had no money remaining on their deal, no guaranteed money remaining on their deal, the Niners had to renegotiate. And with their tackle situation of Williams, McKivitz, and Jalen Moore, the Niners really weren't in a position to negotiate hardball with Trent Williams. But I don't think they needed to give him the money that they gave him. They could have guaranteed him, I'm making up a number here, guys, 60%, 70% of what he had left and said, okay, it's guaranteed now, you're good. But they upped him to a top 3 tackle based on where the tackle market was. I didn't think they needed to do that. I don't think they need to go that far. And same with McCaffrey. He had $12 million the last 2 years of his deal that was unguaranteed, 2024 and 2025. The Niners could have guaranteed that money. Yes, they could have and should have extended him, but they also gave him $3 million more per year than what he was making. So now he's averaging about $15 million a year. Why? He was already at the top of the quarterback market, $12 million annually. Why did you push it? Because he had an offensive player of the year. That's great. Hey, here's an extra $750,000. Here's an extra $1.5 million. Didn't have to be $3 million. I thought that was careless spending. Now his cap hits are okay for this year, 2025 and 2026. 2027, it gets out of control. Same for Trent Williams. I think his cap hit this year is $20 million. Next year is $20 million. Then 2026 and 7, it gets a little out of control. And I don't know what it looks like if he retires, how that could be alleviated. But you pay Brock. The notion that you can let him go or not pay him or let him play out on his 4th year deal in 2025, then extend him. Guys, you extend him this offseason because you use 2025 to spread out the money. So yes, his 2025 cap hit may be around $20 to $26 million, but 2026 would be a whole lot more if you wait until 2025 plays out because you have less years. I'm sure they'll add void years onto the end, but you take every year you can to spread that cap hit out. And if you want to look at a comp, go on Spotrac or overthecap.com and look at Trevor Lawrence's extension. $55 million a year extension. He was coming off of a rookie contract where he was the number 1 pick. So his contract was higher. It was more valuable, more expensive than Brock's. And they still found a way for the next 2 to 3 years of Trevor Lawrence's extension to be $27 million or lower on the cap each year. The Niners can figure it out. Just because he makes $52 million doesn't mean, guys, that his cap hit is $52 million. I know you know that, but I want to stress it. Will there be trade-offs needed? Yes. And I know I'm going a lot on Kyle, but more so on the Brock thing because fans just think so stupidly. Not you guys, but Joe Schmo and Jane Schmo, 49er fan. Oh, I won't give Purdy. Offer him $35 million. Are you serious? But here's where the trade-off is going to have to come in time. You can't have two high-priced wide receivers. Ayuk got his bag and he's injured. Hopefully he can be ready, maybe start of October next year. Debo, I've maintained for a year and a half or more that Ayuk gets extended, Debo gets traded this upcoming offseason, which is still possible, but they lowered his cap hit. They restructured it that 2024 and 2025, they lowered the cap hit. Now 2026 is going to be a void year. They can't really do anything about that. But if they trade or let go of Debo post June 1st, they only save $5 million. They're a better team with Debo than without him, but he's not a great route runner. So they have to figure out where Debo fits and if he still fits. Trading Debo to save $5 million, trading Debo to save $15 million before the restructure made a lot of sense to me. To save $5, I don't know. But you have Jennings coming back. You have Pearsall on a rookie deal, who you assume is going to take a step year 2. You have Cowing on year 2 that hopefully gets a little bit more involved and runs a Debo light type of offense. The tunnel screens, the quick throws. He's the only player that can take the top off of a defense. Use him, Kyle. But it means you can only have, in the foreseeable future, one receiver making big money, one linebacker making big money, not two, which is why I think Greenlaw's probably gone. One cornerback making big money, not two. They signed Demo, Ward's gone. One DN making big money, Bosa, not two. Although they do have two DNs in Leonard Floyd and Yetur Gross-Matos, who are each making $10 million a year. So you could say you're getting, instead of having one $20 million a year DN, you have two at $10 million a year, which might be more beneficial the way that this team keeps getting bitten by the injury bug. Yetur Gross-Matos was out for 6-8+ weeks. Floyd's been relatively healthy, but at least it's another body. Now, you can argue that they didn't spend great money because of the production. Okay. You can have a high-priced tackle. You can't have two, right? $20 million cap hit for Williams. I think McKivitz is about 5 or less. And I'm sure they'll address the O-line, a swing tackle, because Jalen Moore, the third tackle, is a free agent. They're going to have to bring somebody in, whether in the draft or free agency. They're going to need to bring another guard in, a left guard, because Aaron Banks is a free agent. And I'm sure the Niners aren't going to want to pay what the market's going to dictate. The Niners can field a very competitive, a highly talented top 3, top 5 roster in the league but they just can't double up at high price at positions with high priced players. This year's draft, 2024, they hit on all their picks except for Jarrett Kingston, got released. Now he's an offensive lineman with the Panthers. If they can hit on half their draft class next year, say 5 of 9 picks, 4 of 8 picks, wherever they wound up, more young, cheap talent coming in. They're going to be getting rid of older players. Listen, Juice may not come back. And if they do let him go, and I don't think his cap hit's prohibitive, but if they let him go, Kyle likes a fullback. Who's going to be that? They're going to have to find a fullback. I think Dre Greenlaw's gone. He's not old, but coming off of an injury and will be expensive. I think Huff's gone. Not old, but coming off of an injury and expensive. Charvarius Ward's going to be 29 years old, so a little bit older. They went younger with Demo. I think Javon Hargrave's a June 1st cap casualty. Saves $20 million on the cap. Not necessarily a young player. And even the players that are old, Warner's only 27. McCaffrey's 27. Kittle's 31. I do think he gets extended I think he finishes his career as a Niner. He's going to go 10+ years with San Francisco. Their secondary's young. Their D-line, Bosa being 27. I think Malik Collins is 29 or 30. Otherwise, Jordan Elliott's 26. Evan Anderson's 22. Kalia Davis is 24. There's youth there. There's youth on the O-line. McKivitz relatively young. Pooney's a rookie. They do need a center. The idea that the Niners no team can afford everybody. Let's just get that out there. No team can afford everybody. You have to pick and choose, but they're still going to have star players at receiver, tight end, running back, quarterback, D-end, corner, linebacker, and very good or very good players at safety. What more do you want, guys? This isn't Madden. You can't turn the salary cap off. $48 million in cap space next year, with the potential of having maybe close to 80 million, 75 to 80 million in cap space if they release Hargrave post June 1 and if they extend Kittle and Warner. I think that's a good amount of money to work with, right? That's a third of your cap being free if they decide to go those routes with extensions and releases. let's wrap up one thing on the Brock discussion. I'm seeing gaining traction for, you don't extend Brock, but you bring Aaron Rodgers in. Okay, one, I don't think the Jets are going to release Aaron Rodgers. They might. But if you have to trade for Aaron Rodgers, you don't give up picks for Aaron Rodgers. You don't. Let's count it down. He's 41, coming off of an Achilles injury, has had a not great season with the Jets, wants to run his own offensive system. He is not a leader and he's a team cancer. What about what I just said is attractive to you, other than the name on the back of the jersey? This is not Aaron Rodgers of 5 years ago. It's not Aaron Rodgers of 10 years ago. It's 41, will be 42 next year's Aaron Rodgers, who looks washed. Aaron Rodgers is not coming to the 49ers, guys. It is not only a ludicrous take, it's a stupid one. I'm not sure those are synonyms. It's illogical. It makes no sense. And there's no bearing for why you would want him. There's nothing attractive about Aaron Rodgers going into the 2025 season. Now, if he stays with the Jets and they turn it around, good for him. But I'm not basing it on Aaron Rodgers of 5 years ago. I'm basing it on Aaron Rodgers of the last 2 years. And yes, 2023 for him was a wash, but 2024, they did everything they can to placate that bitch, including bringing in Davante Adams late, and nothing has worked. Defense hasn't helped, but Aaron Rodgers ain't it anymore, guys. Sorry. Kyle will be here for the foreseeable future. Brock will be getting a contract extension in the neighborhood of $52-ish million a year. And all I have to say for you, if you're listening and you're a non-believer, start coping now, because it's going to happen. Another thing that's going to happen is the Niners playing a game on Sunday against Green Bay, 4:25 on Fox. The Packers are a 1.5-point favorite. I just checked the weather in Green Bay. There's no snow. It's going to be cold. Game will probably be in the 30s, but no precipitation anticipated. So let's get this next thing right off the table. This is the Niners. The Niners' best chance probably to make the playoffs is a wild card. And if they lose, the Packers will have the head-to-head on them. They're already 2 games up. They'll be 3 games up, 3.5, with a head-to-head, because you have to figure the wild cards are going to go to Philly or Washington, whoever loses the East. Minnesota, they're not going away. Detroit's going to win the North. And either Green Bay, San Francisco, or the Rams if the Cardinals win the West. Now, if the Niners lose to the Packers, all is not lost. If the Seahawks beat Arizona, because then those teams are 6-5, and the Niners are 5-6. So still 1 game back. Okay? The Niners are in it till they're not. But a loss here really, for people saying that the season is over, they very well may be right. But it's literally not. The season's over for a team who is 1 game back from first place. Again, Niner fans. Ridiculous. It's a tough road to climb, though, because Arizona's schedule is easy, the easiest schedule remaining in the NFL. The Niners have 2 tough road games, Green Bay and Buffalo. But bear with me, or even if they drop those 2 games, they're 5-7. They come home for the Bears and Rams. 2 winnable games that get you to 7-7. So you could still be in the mix. But listen, again, I'm not an optimist. I'm a glass half empty person. But I look at things objectively. They're in it till they're not. And this Packer game is very winnable unless Brock can't play. Brock, shoulder issue. Tried to practice Thursday before practice officially started. Couldn't go. Did not practice at all. And there was no quarterback media availability on Thursday, which has led many to believe that Kyle doesn't know who's going to quarterback. Kyle is hopeful that Brock can play. I mean, Brock played through broken ribs. If it's just shoulder discomfort or soreness, he's got today, he's got tomorrow, and he's got half of Sunday to start feeling better since it's a late game. I think he plays. They have no chance without him. I think Kyle and the team knows that. I think Brock knows that. And I think he will suck it up, in the most positive way of using that phrase, whether they have to shoot up his shoulder or whatever, to play that game. Now, other injuries, George Kittle come out and he said, quote, "I will be out there for sure." If we're going to take his words at face value, Kittle's going to play. Now, Bosa's got the hip injury, the oblique. Trent Williams has the ankle injury. They did not practice the last 2 days, Wednesday and Thursday. They're still, I think, questionable. But Trent may have a better chance than Nick Bosa, which is an issue. Again, if you're losing Bosa, then the whole pass rush situation is going to be abysmal because we know Sorensen doesn't blitz. Kevin Givens, his groin at D tackle, questionable. Cowing, concussion protocol. He was a limited participant in practice on Wednesday, did not practice on Thursday. And Tatum Bethune has a knee sprain. He's going to be out. Charvarius Ward, coming back from the tragic death of his daughter, was a limited participant Wednesday and Thursday. He looks to be on track to play. Now, Green Bay, 7-3. Not an overly impressive team. They needed a blocked field goal last week against the Bears to get that win. Who have they beaten? They beat Indianapolis. They won at Tennessee. They beat the Rams, Arizona, Houston, at Jacksonville, and at Chicago. They lost to Philadelphia, Minnesota, and Detroit. Can't beat good teams. Like the Niners, they can't beat good teams. Now, they beat the Rams and the Cardinals, and the Niners didn't. Take away from that what you will. Should be 6-4. They should have lost that Bears game. Jordan Love, one of the second comings of Jesus Christ at quarterback, right? He of the well-deserved $55 million year contract, 62% on the year, 16 touchdowns, 11 interceptions. Brought in Josh Jacobs at running back. He's gone 838 on the ground and 4 touchdowns. At receiver, it's Jaden Reed leading the way, 38 for 643 and 4 scores. Romeo Doubs, 31 for 429 and 2 scores. And tight end Tucker Kraft, 28 for 375 and 6 scores. Now, the Niners may get a break on the injury front for the Packers. Cornerback Jair Alexander has a PCL tear. He's probably going to miss this game. Jacobs, questionable with a quad and a calf injury, but he's going to play. And starting linebacker Edgerrin Cooper has a hamstring injury. Good chance he does not play. Defensively, again, they're right around where the Niners are. They have 25 sacks on the season. Rashawn Gary at the end, leading the team with 3.5, 10 interceptions on the season, led by safety Xavier McKinney with 5. The Niners, 26 sacks and 11 picks. Not saying these teams are mirror images of each other, but let's go further with offensive and defensive rankings. Overall offense, Niners are second, Packers 4th. Pass offense, Niners are 4th, Packers 9th. Run offense, Packers are 4th, Niners are 7th. And points per game, they are tied, each scoring 25 a game. Defensively, overall, the Niners are 6th. Can you believe that? Packers are 15th. Pass defense, Niners are 8th. Green Bay 13th. Run defense, Niners are 8th. Green Bay 14th. Points allowed, Green Bay is 10th. The Niners are 17th, although only 1 point per game separates them. Turnover differential, Green Bay's +5. The Niners are +3. Evenly matched team, and defensively, the Niners have the advantages in pass defense and run defense and overall defense, which is weird because we watch these games every year, but they're based on yards, and they've had a couple good yardage output games. The Patriots, the Seahawks last week holding Seattle to under 300 yards. So playing okay between the 20s, playing okay for the first 3 quarters, falling apart in the 4th quarter all season. Now, here are the questions, guys, that I have going into this game. Will Bosa and Williams play? If they don't, big time issue. Big time issue. More so for the defense than the offense. I think Jalen Moore will hold his own and acquit himself well. Would you rather have Williams in there? Of course. But Bosa is the bigger hit to the defense and the D-line and the pass rush, right? Last week, Bosa's on the field, 6 points, less than 100 total yards. Bosa comes off 2 straight scoring drives of touchdowns, 185 yards of offense. Might not be 100% correlation, but enough that if Bosa was in, that the outcome might have been different. Offensively, will the Niners get back to a short and intermediate yak passing game? Last week, Debo went 4 for 22, and one of his receptions was one of the last plays of the game where he caught like a 5-yard in and looked like he was going to throw it to somebody. Pearsall, nothing on 2 targets. With Ayuk out last game and Kittle out, it's unacceptable that Debo and Pearsall were such non-factors. Jennings did his work. He had 10 receptions for 90, 91 yards. Nobody else did any sort of work. Running game. Hey, Kyle, will you incorporate Mason and Isaac Guerendo into the running game? It's only been 2 games, and it's not all on CMC, but the running game has looked better without McCaffrey than with him. It is not sacrilegious to say that right now, Jordan Mason is the better runner, the better running back than McCaffrey is. Is there some rust with McCaffrey? Sure. Is he maybe not seeing the field or hitting the holes the same way that Jordan Mason was just due to lack of playing time? I think that's fair to say, or a fair guesstimation to make. But there is no I mean, I know he's going to say, well, we just don't sprinkle players in just to play other players. How about the fact that Jordan Mason was leading the league or top 2, top 3 in running for a large majority of the season, but has touched the ball twice in 2 games, and they came last game against the Seahawks, since McCaffrey's been back. That's got to change. I know McCaffrey is the bigger all-around threat and the better all-around back, better in the pass receptions and probably better in pass protection. But it's inexcusable that Mason isn't playing. It's inexcusable in a way that they haven't run any 2 running back sets. Bring them both in. Put them both in the backfield. Then, flex McCaffrey out to a slot receiver. Still gives the defense are they going to run it? They're going to pass it type of a look. You're creative, Kyle. Show me that. Show us that creativity. If I can think about it, so can you. Which team can run close to their average? And their average is for over 148 yards a game. Who can get to 135 plus? I think that team will win. And who can hold a team under, say, 125? Run D is going to matter, especially in cold weather. Not to say that these are not good cold weather quarterbacks. I mean, Brock played at Iowa State. You think those games weren't cold? Maybe not as cold as how Green Bay can get, but this game is end of November, not end of December, beginning of January. Volume of runs is going to be important. Can they get over 30? And if you get over 30, that means it's got to be something like maybe McCaffrey 15, Brock 5, Mason 5 to 7, and Guerendo 3 to 5. That's just how I'm breaking it up in my head. Getting Charvarius Ward back is going to be big from the standpoint of now you have 3 solid corners on the field in your nickel defense, Ward, Lenoir, and Green. And because of that, because it's Ward and not Isaac Yiadom, who still played relatively well last week, had an interception, should have had another, but mistimed his jump. Will that give Sorensen the confidence to send pressure at Jordan Love? Green Bay's got okay receivers. Are we really going to be so worried about Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs and Christian Watson and Tucker Kraft? Like, these are not household names. These are not Pro Bowl receivers. Jaden Reed's on track for maybe hitting 1,000 yards. Doubs, Watson, Kraft, no. 1 or 2 blitzes versus the Seahawks. Unacceptable. Stay on the defensive side. Will the D fade again? Play well first half. Play well into the third quarter. Gassed, fading, or the offense is out adjusting the defense in the fourth quarter. And really, honestly, what adjustments would the offense need to make? They know the Niners are coming with 4. They know it's happening. Are they just blocking it better? Are they drawing up routes or leaning on the running game a little bit better to offset whatever rush the Niners are going to bring? And if it's no Nick Bosa, there's not going to be much of one. The Niners' fourth quarter defense is 29th in the league in points allowed. Steve Wilks last year, first. The defense has allowed points in every game, in the fourth quarter, in every game this year, all 10 games. Last year, Steve Wilks' team only allowed points in the fourth quarter in 7 games. Steve Wilks is a better defensive coordinator than Nick Sorensen at this point in Nick Sorensen's career. The stats bear it out. Stats later in games bear it out. The creativity, although it wasn't highly creative from Steve Wilks, at least there was more creativity than what Sorensen's bringing. And Sorensen's having I think a decent first year. When you look at the stats, I think they're DVOA, when you kind of adjust for situational stuff, you look at analytics, the Niners offense and defense are pretty high, like top 7. It does go down to what Kyle has said about not finishing in a handful of plays in each game that can swing the tide. He's right. But good teams make those plays. Good teams convert touchdowns, not field goals. Good teams get stops in the second half when they need it. In the fourth quarter, good offenses extend a second down or a third down into a first down. There are a lot of things that are misfiring for the 49ers this year. It is not on any one unit. Listen, last week it wasn't on the special teams. They were totally fine. The last time I picked against the Niners in a road game was at Seattle, and the Niners won that game. So, superstition-wise, and I think a good amount of brain and a good amount of logic, I'm picking the Packers 23-20. If Brock doesn't play, they have no chance. If Brock, Bosa, and Williams plays, they definitely have no chance. If Brock plays and Bosa and Williams are out, not looking great. If all 3 play and all 3 are effective, I think they have a really good chance to win this game. The Niners' 2-game winning streak, the Niners have had only a 2-game winning streak. They haven't beaten anybody with a winning record. The Packers have a winning record. And I think there's going to be more fuel. Now, the Niners' backs are against the wall, so I could see them coming out, fighting, clawing, punching, scraping, scratching, giving everything that they have to stay in this race. But this is also a revenge game for the Packers after how they went out, how Jordan Love choked the game away in the divisional round of the playoffs last year. And I think being at home in front of that cloud with that weather, just cold weather, at Lambeau is going to be too much. And I think just right now, the Packers, they might not be the more talented team, but I think the Packers are the better team right now. And they get a win 23-20. I hope I am wrong. We shall see. I'm recording this on Friday, so it's only 2 days away until we know for sure. But if the Niners lose, remember, guys, we're all rooting for Seattle and we're rooting for the Eagles to beat the Rams. Even if the Rams win, they're only 1 game behind the Rams. And if Seattle wins, they're just 1 game behind everybody. Right? And they play all 3 teams again. They're going to need some help. Even if they beat Green Bay, they're going to need some help, even for a wild card. They need things to start falling their way. They need breaks to start going their way. Nothing has really gone the Niners' way this year when you think about injuries and special teams and offense and defense and fourth quarter stuff. The Niners have not played a complete game yet. And the way it's going, they may not play a complete game all year. The best you can do is maybe have 2 out of your 3 units, offense and defense or special teams, 2 out of 3 firing on all cylinders. I'm not sure if all 3 are going to, or you minimize the damage of the unit that's maybe not pulling its weight. I'll be watching. I know you'll be watching, interested. If the Niners are going to lose, I want them to go down swinging. I want to see some aggressiveness out of Kyle and certainly some aggressiveness out of Sorensen. Whatever they're doing now, whatever they're trying now, employing, utilizing, personnel, formations, plays, pressure, not pressure, whatever it is, shake it up a little bit. I can accept any loss. None of this is like, I don't lose sleep over this stuff anymore. It's not the end of the world. I would love to see the Niners in the playoffs again, of course. But I go back to, we only got 7 more. We may only have 7 more of these games left, guys. And there's going to be 6 months of no Niner football. A lot of you listening, maybe fans of other teams, may live in the Bay Area, maybe a San Francisco Giants fan or a Golden State Warriors fan. I don't follow any other team the way I follow the Niners. I'll watch sports, but there's no other team that I follow that I have any sort of paraphernalia for or really give a shit about. Not this much, just give a shit about in general. So it's going to be a long 6 months. So let's enjoy these next 7 games for as much as we can, wins or losses. And don't get so down or piss and vinegar or making illogical statements on Facebook, Twitter, or social media when things aren't going the Niners' way, live tweeting during a game because they look so bad in the first quarter, fire everybody, but then they look good in the second quarter, and oh my God, like shades of gray, guys. That's where life happens. Hopefully the Niners get a win. Picking against them for a couple different reasons, obviously superstition being one of them. But that concludes the 49ers podcast for this week. Like always, I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to make us part of your listening routine. Thursday night game last night, Browns outlast the Steelers. I mean, the weather played a factor, but again, a 2-8 team beating an 8-2 team. NFL can be very unpredictable at times. 2 of the Browns' 3 wins have come against the Steelers and the Ravens. Go figure. Niners on, nearly nationally televised, 4 o'clock on Fox. Let's root for Seattle against Arizona. Sunday night, we're rooting for the Eagles, and let's just see where the chips fall around midnight Eastern time on Sunday to see what the NFC West looks like. Until now, when we speak again, probably Monday, could be Tuesday, just depending on scheduling. Stay happy, healthy, and safe. We'll talk soon. Enjoy the game in the weekend, guys. Take care.